Welcome back everyone. We are discussing world between the world wars. In the previous video, we have covered the 20th century and why the 20th century is called as the age of extremes, and then we discussed the causes for the world wars. Now, this is in continuation to part 1. This is part 2, in which we are going to discuss the changes that happened in the world after the end of the First World War. So, let's get started. Let us now discuss about the changes that happened in the world after the end of the First World War. After the end of the First World War, many treaties and discussions were done. Okay, to name a few, that are the Treaty of Versailles, which was signed in the year 1919, Treaty of Saint-Germain, which was signed in the year 1919, and also Treaty of Trianon, okay, which was signed in the year 1920. As per the syllabus, we will be discussing only one treaty, that is Treaty of Versailles, which was signed in the year 1919. Okay, so let us discuss the Treaty of Versailles. Britain and its three allies imposed the terms and conditions of the treaty on the defeated countries. So we have already discussed in the previous video that Britain and its allies have defeated Germany and its allies. So the winning countries, okay, which are the winning countries? Britain and its allies. Who are the allies of Britain? France, okay, Russia, though it had withdrawn from the World War. Okay, so Britain and its allies imposed certain terms and conditions of the treaty on the defeated countries. Now, which are the defeated countries? The defeated countries are Germany, Austria, Hungary. So these are the defeated countries on which certain terms and conditions were imposed by Britain and its allies. So this is what happened in the Treaty of Versailles. Now, the Austro-Hungarian Empire and the Ottoman Turkey Empire were dissolved and broken up into small nation states. The German Empire too was broken up and was replaced by a democratic republic. So this is one of the greatest event that developed after the end of the First World War. The Austro-Hungarian Empire, which was ruled by Charles IV, and Ottoman Turkey Empire, which was ruled by Salman Muhammad V, and the German Empire, which was ruled by Wilhelm II, they were all dissolved and the empire system was dissolved, and in the place of empire system, a democratic republic was set up in these empires. Now, what do you mean by democratic republic? Democratic republic is a form of government where people elect their leaders and representatives. So, before the World War, these regions were ruled by emperors who were acting like the complete authoritative kings. Okay, so they were ruling their empires with absolute powers. But after the end of the First World War, these empires, that is, Austro-Hungarian Empire, Ottoman Turkey Empire, and the German Empire, they were broken up, and in those empires, new democratic republics started coming out. So here you can see the Ottoman Empire was replaced by Republic of Turkey. Okay, so Republic of Turkey came in place of Ottoman Empire, and its colonies in Africa were divided among the victorious powers. So before the World War, Ottoman Empire had certain colonies in Africa. So which were those colonies? These countries were Egypt, Tunisia, Libya, etc. So Ottoman Empire had these colonies in Africa. So after the end of the First World War, these empires, okay, were dissolved and their colonies were redistributed among the victorious powers. So which are the victorious countries? The Britain and its allies. Okay, so all the colonies that were belonging to Ottoman Turkey Empire, they were redistributed among the victorious countries. So another major development that happened after the First World War is that there were number of countries that became independent, and countries like Austria, Hungary, Yugoslavia, Czechoslovakia, Estonia, Latvia, Finland. So these type of new countries were formed because they were coming out of the empire kind of rule. So they attained the status of nations later after the end of the First World War. Another important thing that you need to remember here is the Treaty of Versailles imposed heavy penalty. Okay, so they were laying a lot of penalties in form of compensations and fines on the defeated country. Now we know that the defeated countries were Germany and its allies, okay, which include Austria, Hungary, etc. So the Treaty of Versailles imposed penalty on Germany, okay, both on in terms of monetary and in terms of territory. Now, what do you mean by monetary compensation and what do you mean by territorial compensation? It is pretty simple. In terms of monetary compensation, Germany was asked to pay huge compensation because the winning countries believed that it was Germany that instigated the World War. So they asked Germany to pay compensation because of the losses that incurred on the happening of the World War. So Germany was asked to pay compensation and penalties. Okay, so that is called as monetary compensation. Now, what is territorial compensation? Territorial compensation is Germany has lost a lot of its territory to France and other countries. So Germany was also asked to give back some of its territories to France and also other countries among the victorious countries. Germany had to give away the territories to the victorious countries. So these were the latest developments that happened after the signing of Treaty of Versailles. The important thing that you need to remember here is Germany was asked to pay both monetary compensation and territorial compensation. In terms of monetary compensation, Germany was asked to pay fines and penalties, and in terms of territorial compensation, Germany was asked to give back its territories to France and other victorious countries. Now, the second major development that happened after the end of the First World War is the formation of an international institution called League of Nations in the year 1920. The League of Nations was the first ever international organization after the end of the First World War, which was formed as a consequence of the Treaty of Versailles. In the previous slide, we have seen what is Treaty of Versailles. Treaty of Versailles was an agreement between the winning countries and the defeated countries. The winning countries imposed penalties on the defeated countries, especially Germany, to pay the monetary compensation and also the territorial compensation. So, as a consequence of that Treaty of Versailles, the first ever international organization, remember this, the first ever international organization that happened after the end of the First World War, that is League of Nations, was established in the year 1920. So when was this actually established? It was established on 11th of January 1920. Okay, it was established on 11th of January 1920. But why was this formed? What was the intention behind the establishment of this international organization? The main objective of this international organization was to prevent wars. Okay, the world had already seen a lot of damages that were caused because of World War One. So few countries came together. They wanted to put an end to war. So with that intention, they established this first ever international organization called League of Nations. But how did it achieve this objective? Okay, so they wanted to prevent this war by settling the disputes. So it is a known fact that generally because of disputes, wars happen between the countries. So if the disputes were settled through negotiations, okay, what do you mean by settling the disputes through negotiations? Settling the disputes through negotiations is when there is any dispute between two or more countries, a proper way of negotiation can be done and a war could be prevented. Now, what is negotiation? Negotiation is nothing but sitting together, having a peaceful talk, okay, trying to find a mid path rather than going to a war. The countries that are having disputes or disagreement, they sit quietly, they discuss the issues, and they take a solution for that. So that was the intention of the League of Nations. That is, they wanted to prevent war. Okay, so the wars happen generally because of the disputes. So they wanted to settle the disputes through negotiation and also ensuring disarmament. If you remember, we were talking about arms race, and we were also talking about arms race and militarism. Okay, so the countries believed that uh, by manufacturing and by increasing the production of arms and weapons, the countries could assure themselves that they are safe. So that is what they wanted to put an end. Okay, so ensuring disarmament means reducing the size of militarism and also reducing the size of the army and reduction in the manufacturing of arms. So by adopting these methods, wars could be prevented. So that was the objective of the League of Nations. And apart from preventing wars, the League of Nations also wanted to work for the development. Okay, they wanted to work for the development because the world had already seen lot of losses that were both in terms of economy, in terms of human beings. The world had already seen lot of losses. Now uh, the countries wanted to focus on development. So League of Nations also focused on development and also labor welfare. Okay, they wanted to do something for the welfare of the laborers and improve the health of the health of the citizens in the countries. So these were the objectives with which League of Nations were established. Initially, it had 58 members. Later, more countries joined. However, this first ever international institution had a limited success. Why are we saying that it has a limited success? It had limited success because this organization failed to prevent the happening of the Second World War. Okay, the intention with which the League of Nations was established could not be fulfilled. Okay, so what do you think was the reason? It was obviously preventing the wars, right? So to prevent the wars, League of Nations was established. However, this League of Nations could not prevent the happening of the Second World War. So that is why we can say that it has limited success. Moving on to the next topic. The next topic is the Russian Revolution. Russian Revolution started in the year 1917 and it continued till 1922. So, what is Russian Revolution? What happened during the revolution? We are going to discuss that in this slide. If you could recollect, we have discussed the causes for the World War, and then we have seen the countries that have participated in the World War. Okay, so Britain, France, Russia. Russia was also participating in the World War, but it had withdrawn later because it had an agreement with Germany, and there was also internal revolution happening in the country, that is social revolution happening in their own country, which is why Russia had withdrawn from the World War. So that was what we have discussed. Now in this topic we'll be discussing in detail about what is this Russian Revolution, what happened during this revolution, what is this revolution about. So before we begin, let us go through some of the points relating to Russia. Okay, so about Russia in the earlier 20th century, it was ruled by Tsars emperors. Okay, so it was not a country actually, it was an empire. Okay, so the empire was ruled by Tsar emperors in the early 20th century. Now, Russia was a vast area of land that was spread over two continents. Okay, so Russia was spread over two continents, that is Europe and Asia, which is why it is called as Eurasian power. Now, talking about the population, it was the third largest populated country in the world after China and India. Okay, so it comprised of several nations. Today we have Russia, Ukraine, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, and Turkmenistan. These were the independent. These are the independent countries in today's world, but they were all part of Russian Empire. Okay, so today's countries. Okay, what are today's countries? Russia, Ukraine, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, and Turkmenistan. These were all part of Russian Empire, and this Russian Empire was ruled by Tsars emperors. Okay, this empire was ruled by Tsars emperors. Okay, so how was the economy of Russia? Okay, Russia was basically an agricultural country. And how was the situation in Russia? There were always struggles between peasants. Okay, peasants are farmers, and feudal lords. Who are the feudal lords? Feudal lords are basically the landowners. Okay, so feudal lords are basically the landowners, and peasants used to work on the farms of the land owners, that is feudal lords. In return, these feudal lords used to give protection to the peasants. Okay, so that is how the economy worked during the Tsar's empire. Okay, so there was always struggles between peasants and feudal lords with respect to control over the land. Okay, so most of the lands were under the control of the landlords, whom we call as feudal lords. The feudal lords owned most of the lands, and in return, the peasants used to work on their farms. Okay, in return, the feudal lords used to provide them protection, and the peasants who were working on the lands of the landlords, they had to pay rent for the land that they have tilled. Now, what do you mean by tilled? Tilled means the land on which they are working. Okay, so they are taking on rent from the feudal lords. Okay, and the feudal lords used to provide the protection to the peasants in return. So this was the situation of Russia under the Tsars Empire. Let us know a little bit more about the Tsars Empire. So, who was ruling in the Tsars Empire? It was Tsar Nicholas II, who ruled over this vast Russian Empire with the help of army and bureaucracy. Okay, so here in the map you can see the green colored region. This entire region was coming under Russian Empire. So the emperor took the help of the army. Okay, he took the help of the army, and he took the help of the bureaucrats. Bureaucracy in the sense he appointed various officers at various levels. So they used to work on behalf of the kings. So that was how Sir Nicholas has had organized his administration of the Tsar's empire. But the Russian economy had suffered a lot by the First World War. So when the First World War happened, the Russian economy had suffered a severe loss. The reason is Russian army was the largest army in the world before the World War, and Russians were sent to participate in the World War. Though it had the largest army, by the end of 1917, Russia had lost the lives of 2 million soldiers and civilians. Okay, so Russia was sending its soldiers to fight in the World War, and that is why it was said that Russia became the biggest loser of human lives. Okay, since it had the largest army in the world, okay, it was also the biggest loser of human lives in the World War One. Now, not only human beings lost their life, there was also food shortage under the SARS rule. Okay, why there was a food shortage? There was a food shortage because whatever the food was produced in the country, it was supplied to the war front. Okay, the people who were participating in the war, the food was supplied. So when maximum production that was cultivated by farmers in Russian Empire under Tsar Nicholas II's rule, the food was supplied to the people who were fighting the wars on the World War I. Now, what happened to the people who were living in the cities? They had faced severe shortage of food because all that was cultivated that was sent on the war front areas so that they can feed the soldiers who were fighting the war. So this caused a lot of problems to the people living in cities and villages because the food was entirely supplied to the soldiers, and that is why there was a severe shortage of food in the villages, cities of Russia. Let us now discuss about an important event which happened in the month of March, which we call as March Revolution. What is this March Revolution? Why did it happen? What exactly happened in this revolution? We'll be discussing that in this slide. In the previous slide, if you remember, I told you that the people were unhappy because there was a severe food shortage in the country because whatever was produced in Russia, whatever food was produced in Russia, that was sent to the farmers who were fighting the war at the war front. So this created a severe food shortage among the civilians who were living in cities and villages. So due to this, there was lot of dissatisfaction among the Russians. Okay, so this led to a major revolution, which we call as March Revolution. So let us now discuss about that revolution. So on March 8th, 1917, around 10,000 women, okay, 10,000 women of the capital, St. Petersburg, took out a procession. Okay, procession means they took out a rally. So what were the demands of this 10,000 women? The demands of this 10,000 women was that they wanted peace and bread. Now, what do you mean by peace and bread? Peace in the sense they do not want wars, they want peace. And bread in the sense here, it means that since they were suffering from shortage of food, they want food. Okay, so that was the major demands put forward by this 10,000 women who took out a procession on 8th of March 1917 in the capital city of Russian Empire, that was St. Petersburg. Tsar Nicholas II. So at that time, who was ruling the Russian Empire? Tsar Nicholas II. Okay, he was ruling the Russian Empire and he was very much upset by this protest. Okay, so he was unhappy with this protest where the women came out on streets. They were demanding that they want peace. They do not want their soldiers to be sent to the war front. They want the food to be supplied to the civilians. Okay, so they thought that all the problems that were happening in their country was because of the continuity of the war. They want their king to withdraw from the war. They do not want their soldiers who were the sons, who were the husbands, who were the brothers of these women. They do not want them to participate in the war. But Sir Nicholas was sending the army in huge numbers so that they participate in the war. But these women, they do not want war. All that they want is peace, and they want bread to satisfy their hunger. So that is why these 10,000 women, they took out a procession demanding for peace and bread to show their discontent against the rule of Sir Nicholas II. So when these protests were going on, Sir Nicholas was very much upset. So he ordered the army, okay, so he ordered the army to suppress the demonstrators. So what do you mean by suppressing the demonstrator? Suppressing the demonstrator means whoever was undertaking these rallies and procession, the king asked the army people to threaten them and to stop the demonstration. So he even told that to fire at the people if they don't listen to the instructions. So when Sir Nicholas ordered these instructions to the army also could not digest this direction, and instead the soldiers also joined the demonstrator. Here what did Sir Nicholas tell the army people? He told the army people to fire the people who are continuing the protest. But what happened is soldier, instead of threatening the demonstrators, they themselves have joined the demonstrator. Now in just 2 days the situation became completely reversed. It became so bad that even Sir Nicholas had to leave his throne and he escaped from Russia, because now here everyone joined the protest. Now here king was left with no support even from the army. So that is why the situation became completely bad for him, because now the army is also not under his control, because they opposed the Sir Nicholas II's decision on firing on the demonstrators. So that is where Sir Nicholas had no other option but to leave his throne and escape. Russians later, after the king leaves his throne and he escapes out of the country, Russians, the common people, they made a provisional government. Now, what do you mean by provisional government? Provisional government is a temporary government. Okay, provisional government is a temporary government. So that was made by Russians, and this was the first revolution that happened in Russia, which we call as March Revolution. Since it happened on 8th of March in the year 1917, this revolution came to be called as March Revolution. So after the March Revolution, a bigger revolution took place in the month of October 1917, and this revolution was not spontaneous. That means the October Revolution was a revolution that happened because of a series of events, and it did not happen all of a sudden. There were some events that led to the happening of another event in the month of October. So after Sir Nicholas II left the Russian Empire, there was a provisional government, and the provisional government was led by the liberals. Now, who are these liberals? Liberals are those people who promote and advocate the ideals of equality, justice, freedom, etc. And aristocrats are those people who belong to upper class, rich nobility class. So the provisional government was led by both the liberals and the aristocrats. So these people, that is the provisional government that was led by liberals and aristocrats, they decided that they shall continue to participate in the war, because they thought that by participating in the war, they can protect the honor of Russia. So that means these people, the provisional government, was following the same principles that were followed by Sir Nicholas II. So that means though Nicholas II left the country, but the people who formed the government also followed the same ideology. So we have seen why people have started the March Revolution, because they do not want war. They do not want problems relating to war. But this provisional government that was consisting of liberals and aristocrats decided to continue the war just like Sir Nicholas II wanted. So the common people were not happy about it. They were tired of all the military actions. Okay, so they were not happy with the military action, and obviously there was also economic shortage, and the people did not want war. All that they want is peace. So they began organizing themselves in councils, which are called as Soviet. So since people were not happy, they decided that they shall organize themselves into councils. What are councils now? Councils are groups. So to meet their demands, they decided to organize themselves into groups which are called as Soviets. Now, the Soviets, the groups of soldiers, industrial workers, and people who were living in rural areas, they were united by a group of Russian Communist Party, which is called as Bolsheviks. Now here you can see Bolsheviks and Soviets coming together. Okay, they had a common goal, that is they wanted to establish peace in the society. They want to end the war, and they wanted to focus on development. So the Soviets and the Bolsheviks united, and they represented the common people's power. Let us now discuss about a leader who was belonging to Bolsheviks. He was Vladimir Lenin. Okay, he was a very important leader of the Bolsheviks. The Bolsheviks got the support. Okay, they were able to get the support from Soviets because Bolsheviks demanded immediate and unconditional peace. So the Soviets were also demanding the same thing, that is, they wanted to end the war and they wanted peace in the country. So since their objectives were similar, the Bolsheviks could get the support from the Soviets. And apart from that, Bolsheviks also demanded that the land should be nationalized. Okay, so what is meant by land getting nationalized? The lands would be taken from the rich people, and it shall be under the control of the government, and the land shall be distributed to the peasants who are into farming. So it shall be distributed among the peasants. And Bolsheviks also wanted to control over the price. Okay, since the prices were increasing, Bolsheviks wanted to control the prices in such a way that common people can afford the basic essentials. So that is why Bolsheviks wanted to have a control over the prices. And further, they also wanted that all the factories and banks in the country to be nationalized. So here, what do you mean by factories and banks getting nationalized? Factories and banks getting nationalized means that the factories and the banks in the country shall be under the control of government. Okay, so that is what is called as nationalization. Okay, so the Soviets, under the Soviets, what are Soviets, children? I told you that they are the councils, they are the groups. Okay, they are the groups of peasants, they are the groups of they are the groups of peasants, and they are the group of the rural people living in villages. So the Soviets under the Bolsheviks leadership. Okay, so who was the leader of Bolsheviks? Just now we have discussed that it was Vladimir Lenin. Okay, so the Soviets under the Bolsheviks leader, they were successful in seizing the power. Seizing the power means they were able to take away the power that was in the hands of the liberals and the aristocrats who were running the provisional government. We spoke about the temporary government in the previous slide, that was set up by the liberals and the aristocrats. So the Soviets under the leadership of Bolsheviks, they were able to take away the power, seize the power from the provisional government in October, November in the month of 1917. So once the power went into the hands of the Soviets and the Bolsheviks, the immediate step that was taken by them was that they ended the war, and they undertook land reforms, and they redistributed the land among the people. So that was the immediate step that was taken by the Soviets and the Bolsheviks immediately after they came to power. Let us now discuss about the formation of USSR. USSR was set up by the Soviet government in the year 1922. So we'll discuss about the formation of USSR in this slide. So let's begin. Russia could not return to complete peace because of a civil war that was started in the country, and this war was led by white armies of Russian monarchists and anti-communist soldiers with the help from countries like Britain, France, the USA and Japan. However, the Bolsheviks were able to defeat these white armies, okay, in the year 1920. So if you could remember, in the previous slide we have discussed how the Bolsheviks were able to seize the power from the provisional government in the year 1970. Since 1917, the country was under the control of the Bolsheviks, though the Bolsheviks were able to seize the power. They were able to take the power from the provisional government in the year 1917. The country was going through a civil war. Now, what is civil war? Civil war is a war that happens inside the country among the members of the same country who are from the same country, between different groups. That is called a civil war. So this civil war was between the white armies. The civil war was between the white armies, okay, white armies and Bolsheviks. Okay, so we have already seen who are Bolsheviks. Now let us try to understand who are these white armies. Okay, so white armies included the monarchists. Okay, so it included the monarchist groups and anti-communist soldiers. Now who are anti-communist soldiers? Those soldiers who were against the communism, against the principles of communism, against the principles of socialism. So this white army consisted of those monarchs, those kings, those emperors and soldiers who were against anti-communism, anti-socialism, etc. They were against the principles of Bolsheviks that supported socialism. So Bolsheviks supported socialism, and uh, white armies included the Russian monarchists, the kings and the soldiers who were against such socialism. Okay, so these white armies received the support from countries like Britain, France, USA and Japan. So these are the countries that are in favor of capitalism. They were against socialism, so that is why they have given their back, they have given their support to Russian monarchies. So the civil war was actually supported by the white armies and countries like Britain, France, USA and Japan that were in favor of capitalism. Though there was a civil war, however, the Bolsheviks were able to defeat all these parties. They were able to defeat the white armies, which included Russian monarchists and anti-communist soldiers. Though these white armies got the support from Britain, France, USA and Japan, the Bolsheviks were successful in defeating all of them by 1920. The Bolsheviks also announced the end of the Russian Empire and permitted the various nations under it to become independent. However, gradually, most of the nations that came under the empire of Tsar agreed to join the Union of Soviet Socialist Republic, that is USSR, which was set up by the Soviet government of Russia in the year 1922. So, the Bolsheviks announced the end of the Russian Empire. So, they said that the country is free from Russian Empire, and they also allowed the countries, they also allowed various nations that were part of Tsar's empire to become independent. However, the nations that were under the control of Tsar's empire, they have decided to join USSR. So that way, the regions that were once upon a time coming under the control of Tsar empire now decided to join USSR. So USSR was set up in the year 1922. So what is the full form of USSR? The full form of USSR is Union of Soviet Socialist Republic. So this started as a great experiment of building a country without exploiters like feudal lords, kings or capitalists. So Russia was trying to build a socialist economy. So they started experimenting of building a country where there will be no exploiters like feudal lords, kings or capitalists. The USSR also tried to build a society that was industrialized and modern and yet did not have inequality or exclusion of the people on the basis of birth, gender or language. So what is USSR actually trying to do? It is actually trying to promote industrialization. It is actually trying to become modern, but as well as at the same time, it also tried to implement the principles of welfare, principles of socialism that promote equality, that promotes integration of the people, that discourages discrimination of any form, be it discrimination on the basis of birth, gender or language. Here, the primary motto of the Bolsheviks was to build an economy which is industrially strong, which is modern, but as well as the same time that includes the principles of socialism, which speaks about equality, which speaks about inclusion of the people. And it completely is against any kind of discrimination based on birth, gender, or language. Let us now discuss about another popular figure in the history of Russia, that is Joseph Stalin. After the death of Vladimir Lenin in the year 1924, Stalin emerges as the leader of the Communist Party. Over the next decades, he establishes absolute control and he ends all the opposition that was against him or against the Soviet socialism. He kept a complete control over them and he ended everyone who opposed his rule or opposed his party's ideology. He used his undisputed power to build the economy of USSR. Now, what do you mean by undisputed power? Undisputed power means he had complete control over the government and he had complete control over the people. No one had the courage to question him or challenge him. So he used that power to build the economy of USSR. So the USSR began a program of planned economic development with its 5-year plans. So if you could remember, it is the same 5-year plan that we had in India. So the 5-year plans in India were actually taken from the constitution of USSR. So these planned economic development began in the year 1928. So this program had a twin policy. Twin policy means they had two policies that were given priority under these 5-year plans. Number one is fast industrialization. They wanted to encourage industrialization. They wanted to accelerate the growth of industries in their economy. They wanted to promote the growth of industries in their countries. That is called as fast industrialization. And number two is collectivization of agriculture. Now, what is collectivization of agriculture? Under Stalin's rule in Russia, the government decided that all the small farms that were owned by individual peasants will be combined into large government run farms. So that is called as collectivization of agriculture. So these were the two policies that were part of USSR's planned economic development, which is also called as 5-year planning. Let us now discuss about the impact of Russian Revolution on the world. The USSR's experience inspired many people worldwide, especially those who were committed to the principles of equality and national liberation. These people later went on to become communist and they tried to create a communist society in their respective countries. So here, looking at what was happening in USSR's experience with communism and socialism, many people across the world, especially those people who give importance to equality, who give importance to national liberation, integration, unity, etc., they were deeply influenced by what was happening in USSR. These people later they became communist and they tried to create such kind of societies, such kind of communist societies in their respective countries. Now, talking about Indian leaders who were inspired by USSR's experience, these leaders are M.N. Roy, Rabindranath Tagore, and Jawaharlal Nehru. They were deeply inspired by the Russian Revolution. However, they did not agree with some of the aspects of uh, communism and socialism, that is, suppression of opposition political parties. In socialism, they do not believe in the existence of opposition. So they try to suppress the opposition because the society together is considered as one unit. So they do not leave a scope for existence of opposition parties. So that is one aspect to which the Indian leaders did not agree. However, they were deeply inspired by the experiments that were conducted by USSR. So, on the other hand, many other people were also horrified by the violence used by USSR to suppress the opposition and the denial of multi-party democracy and the freedom in the USSR. So, on one hand, we have some people who were deeply inspired. On the other hand, we also have some people who were horrified by the violence. Okay, the violence that was used to suppress the opposition party, because in socialism and communism, generally the governments do not allow for the existence of opposition party, and there is also no scope for multi-party democracy. So in one way you can say that these are the negative aspects of socialism and communism. Looking at these principles of socialism and communism, some people were extremely horrified. They were extremely horrified by the violence that was used to suppress the power of the opposition, to suppress the existence of the opposition parties, and to suppress the existence of multi-party democracies. Because in socialism, there is no scope for the opposition, and there is no scope for the existence of multi-party democracy. Here you can remember about one person, that is George Orwell. He wrote a famous satiric novel. The name of his novel is Animal Farm. So, in his book Animal Farm, he highlights the ideals of Russian Revolution, where the sufferings of the people because of socialism and communism were explained in his book. So, he describes the Russian Revolution as an animal farm. The reason he might have titled his book as Animal Farm is because he wanted to show that how animals are treated in a farm. So it is a satiric novel. He wanted to express the negative aspects of socialism. So that is why he uses his novel to describe how people were suffering in Russia because of Russian Revolution. And therefore, he gives his novel the name as Animal Farm.